There's something deeply sacred about the atmosphere of a home. It's more than just walls and furniture. It's where your spirit rests, where your soul can breathe, where you find shelter not just from the weather, but from the weight of the world. That's why you have to be so incredibly careful about the people you allow to step into that atmosphere. Because not everyone carries peace, not everyone brings warmth, and one of the most dangerous people to let in, though they might seem harmless at first, is the chronic complainer. You know who I'm talking about. The one who walks through the door, and within 5 minutes, they've already pointed out what's wrong with the room temperature, the food, the lighting, and your life decisions. Sometimes without even meaning to be cruel. But oh, how heavy the air gets when they're in the room. These aren't people who simply need a listening ear every now and then. No, these are people who live in complaint. It's like their breath, constant, habitual, and exhausting. What you need to understand is that chronic complaining is more than just an annoying habit. It's a spirit, it's an energy. And when that energy comes into your home, it doesn't just sit in the corner and stay quiet. It moves, it spreads, it soaks into your walls, into your conversations, into the hearts of your children. You start to notice your own thoughts shifting. Suddenly you're noticing the things that aren't perfect. You're focused on lack instead of gratitude, frustration instead of faith. You may think, well, I can handle it. I'm strong. I won't let it affect me. But hear me, no one is so strong that they can live in negativity without it eventually leaving a mark. Because when someone constantly complains, they're not just expressing dissatisfaction. They're planting seeds. Seeds of discontentment, seeds of bitterness, seeds of frustration. And those seeds grow in the soil of your spirit if you're not careful. I've been in homes where the atmosphere was so heavy you could feel it in your chest like a weight. And it wasn't because of a crisis or a tragedy, it was because someone who had no business being in that sacred space had come in and filled the air with complaint. And you know what it does to a home like that? It steals the joy, it suffocates the laughter, it dims the light in your eyes, until the place that was meant to refresh you begins to drain you. The chronic complainer doesn't usually come with bad intentions. They may be a family member, a longtime friend, someone you feel obligated to let in because of history or politeness. But you've got to understand something. Just because someone has access to your past doesn't mean they have a right to your present, especially not your home. You've got to love some people from a distance. And that's not unkind. That's wisdom. That's spiritual discernment. Because your home should be a garden where peace grows, not a field trampled by criticism and dissatisfaction. And when you allow someone in who thrives on negativity, you risk more than just your mood. You risk your mindset. You risk your momentum. You risk the very atmosphere that God gave you to protect. Sometimes, the most spiritual thing you can say is simply, not in this house. Not here. Not around my children. Not around my marriage. Not around my peace. Not around the promises I'm holding on to. You don't have to confront them with fire and fury. You just stop inviting them in. Let the phone go to voicemail. Make the visit short. Set the tone with love, but set it firmly. I know some of you may be struggling with the idea of pushing someone away. You've been taught to be kind, to be welcoming, to turn the other cheek. And yes, kindness matters. But kindness is not the same as access. You can be kind and still be protective. You can be loving and still have limits. You can be full of grace and still close the door when peace is at risk. If your home is going to be a sanctuary, you've got to guard the gates. You've got to be mindful of the voices that echo through your halls. Because the chronic complainer doesn't just talk to you, they talk to the walls. And walls remember, atmospheres absorb, spirits linger. So choose wisely who you let walk in and sit down. Some people don't need to stay for tea. They need to be blessed from afar. Because in this house we choose joy. In this house we choose peace. In this house we keep the presence of God and the power of gratitude alive and well. And we don't give that up, not even for politeness. Not even for guilt. Not even for someone we've known our whole life. Because this house, your house, is holy ground. There's a kind of person you need to be especially careful of. The kind who doesn't recognize or respect boundaries. The one who walks into your home and, slowly but surely, begins to behave like it's theirs. Not because they live there, not because you gave them permission, but because they've decided your comfort doesn't matter as much as their convenience. These people may come with a smile, even good intentions, but underneath it, there's a quiet disregard for the sacredness of your space. And I want you to hear me clearly. That's dangerous. You see, boundaries are not just polite suggestions. Boundaries are spiritual protections. When you draw a line around your home, you're not being rude, you're being wise. You're telling the world, this is where my peace begins. This is where my values live. This is where I recharge, where I heal, where I grow. And anyone who can't see that, anyone who ignores that, is not someone you need to entertain. Now, the boundary breaker doesn't always show up in bold colors. Sometimes they come dressed in charm. They laugh loud, they say all the right things. They make themselves comfortable quickly. But you begin to notice the subtle ways they cross lines. They open doors without asking. They make comments about how you run your house. They start rearranging things, not just physically, but emotionally. They speak into areas of your life they were never invited into. They come into your space and somehow turn your home into a place where you feel tense instead of relaxed, unsure instead of safe. And the worst part? They'll make you feel guilty for trying to re-establish the very lines they crossed. I was just trying to help. I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought we were closer than that. No, 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 no. Love doesn't erase respect. Relationship doesn't cancel honor. If someone really cares about you, they will never make you feel like your boundaries are a burden. I've seen homes lose their peace not because of crisis, not because of some tragedy, but because someone who should have been told no was given a comfortable yes. I've seen women who couldn't breathe in their own kitchens, parents who felt like strangers in their own living rooms, all because someone moved in emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, and took over space that was never meant for them. Let me tell you something, and I say it with all the love in my heart. You are allowed to reclaim your space. You are allowed to say, this isn't working for me. You are allowed to close the door, literally and figuratively, on anyone who refuses to respect the atmosphere you've been called to protect. And that's not just for your sake. That's for the sake of everyone in that house. Your children feel it. Your spouse feels it. The spirit of the home feels it when someone comes in who doesn't belong. Now, that might sound harsh to some people, but wisdom knows how to protect without apology. See, there's a difference between being hospitable and being hijacked. Hospitality invites people in with honor and warmth. Hijacking manipulates the moment, takes what isn't freely given, and leaves you drained. Don't confuse the two. You might be wondering, but what if they're family? What if there's someone I've known for years? Listen, love them, bless them, pray for them. But don't let familiarity become a license for disrespect. Even Jesus said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That wasn't just about honesty, that was about clarity. Some people will keep pushing until you say clearly and firmly, no, that crosses the line. And if they get offended by that, it only proves the boundary was necessary. You were not designed to constantly live in defense mode in your own home. You shouldn't have to tiptoe around someone else's entitlement in the one place where your soul is meant to exhale. That's not harmony. That's emotional hijacking, and it will chip away at your spirit if you let it go on unchecked. I've learned something about people who refuse to respect boundaries. They rarely change until they're made to face the fact that their behavior has consequences. And sometimes the most powerful consequence you can give them is distance, not punishment. Just space. Because space teaches people what words sometimes can't, that peace is priceless, and that your home isn't available for anyone who doesn't honor it. Protect your home, protect your peace. If someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they have no business crossing your threshold. There's something sacred about trust. It's not loud, it's not showy, but when it's broken, it shakes everything. One of the most dangerous people you can let into your home is not the one who kicks in the door with bad intentions, but the one who walks in smiling, holding a story in one hand and your business in the other. The gossiper, the whisperer, the one who wraps destruction in charm and sells it as just talking. You've got to be careful with people who always have something to say about everyone else. Because if they talk that easily about them, what do you think happens when they leave your house? Ooh, they're taking your name right into the next room, the next conversation, the next, can I tell you something if you promise not to say anything moment. And here's the thing. Doesn't matter how long you've known them. It doesn't matter how sweet they seem. If someone is always stirring the pot, always bringing mess, always pointing fingers, don't be fooled. That's not conversation. That's contamination. You may not notice it at first. Maybe it starts small. They mention something about a mutual friend. They lean in a little too closely. Their voice drops. And suddenly the energy in the room changes. You can feel it. The air thickens. And you find yourself listening, even if part of you feels uncomfortable. Why? Because gossip draws you in like a fire draws the cold. It's tempting. It makes you feel included, like you're on the inside of something. But hear me. What looks like intimacy is really intrusion. What feels like bonding is actually betrayal. Gossip never comes without a cost. The home was never meant to be a headquarters for secrets and speculation. It's meant to be a refuge, a place where words build up, not tear down. But when you let a gossiper sit on your couch, when you let their words echo down your hallway, you are inviting division into the heart of your sanctuary. They plant suspicion like seeds, and before you know it, you're looking sideways at people you used to trust, second-guessing friendships that used to feel safe, doubting peace that used to come easy. And gossip doesn't just hurt the people being talked about, it damages the listeners too. It shifts your spirit, it lowers your standards, it makes the sacred feel common and the private feel public. That's the danger. Because once you allow that spirit in, it never stays small. It grows, it spreads, it reaches into places it was never supposed to go. Sometimes the people who gossip the most are the ones who seem the kindest. Isn't that something? They'll bring you a meal, compliment your outfit, ask about your family, and then slowly, carefully begin to unravel the dignity of others behind closed doors. But you have to recognize that for what it is. That's not kindness, that's manipulation. That's someone using their charm to mask the fact that they are carrying poison in their mouth and hoping you'll drink it with a smile. You need to know this. Your home sets the tone for your life. The words spoken within it echo far beyond its walls. What you allow to be spoken in your living room will eventually shape what you believe in your heart. And that's why you have to be intentional. Draw the line. Set the standard. Let it be known. Not in this house. Not under this roof. Not where we pray. Not where we raise our children, not where we rest and recover and dream. And don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to stand firm. If someone starts a sentence with, "Don't tell anyone I said this," stop them right there. If they come to your home eager to discuss someone else's downfall, remind them that you weren't called to be a dumping ground for other people's secrets. You were called to be a light, not a landfill. I know it's uncomfortable sometimes, especially when the person gossiping is someone close to you, a friend, a relative, someone you feel obligated to entertain. But obligation should never outweigh discernment. Just because you love someone doesn't mean you have to let them speak death into your space. Love them, yes, but teach them by example that in your presence, honor will always be louder than hearsay. Some of you need to reclaim your home from the voices that have made you question your peace. Reclaim it from the whispers that have left a residue of suspicion and unease. Cleanse the air with truth, with encouragement, with silence if necessary. And make it clear to every soul who crosses your threshold, in this house, we protect what's sacred, including the reputation of those who aren't here to defend themselves. Because your home is not just a structure, it's a reflection of your spirit. And when the spirit of gossip is allowed to move freely, it will always leave behind the smell of something rotten. But when truth, love, and respect set the tone, even your silence will carry strength. So let your house speak peace, even when your words are few. There are people who walk into your home and leave it lighter, people whose presence feels like a breath of fresh air, who make your space feel warmer, calmer, more whole. And then there are those who walk in and somehow, without saying much, shift the entire atmosphere. You feel it in your body. You feel it in your spirit. It's like the room gets heavier. Time gets slower. Everything starts revolving around them, their needs, their drama, their emotions. And by the time they leave, you're not refreshed. You're exhausted. That, my friend, is what I call an energy vampire. They don't always come in with bad motives. Sometimes they don't even realize what they're doing. But their pattern is the same. They pull, they drain, they demand. And what they don't take with their words, they take with their energy. Your peace becomes their sounding board. Your home becomes their emotional dump site. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll find yourself confused as to why you're tired, irritated, maybe even anxious, and never connect it to the one who just left your house 2 hours ago. You see, some people live in chaos. They are addicted to it. And they're not looking for help. They're looking for a stage. So when they show up at your door, it's not about connection. It's about consumption. And if you don't protect yourself, they'll consume every bit of stillness you've worked so hard to build. Because these people aren't just loud. They can be soft-spoken too. They don't always yell. Sometimes they just wear you down with constant need. Endless problems, always something wrong, never a moment to simply be without crisis. And hear me clearly, compassion is not the same as codependency. You can be compassionate without allowing yourself to be consumed. You can care deeply without turning your home into a revolving door for emotional chaos. You are not cold. You are not heartless. You are simply choosing to draw a line that says, this space, this home is sacred, and I will not let it be a holding cell for other people's dysfunction. Because if you let it, it will take root. You'll start rearranging your schedule, your family time, your priorities, just to accommodate the emotional roller coaster someone else refuses to get off. And before you know it, you're not living in a home anymore. You're managing a crisis center. That's not what you were called to do. That's not peace. That's bondage, dressed up as compassion. I've seen people, good, strong people, begin to lose themselves trying to keep the peace with someone who didn't even bring peace into the room to begin with. They walk on eggshells, afraid to say no, afraid to confront the dysfunction, afraid to set the necessary boundaries. But let me tell you something. Silence doesn't keep the peace. It just gives chaos a place to grow. Sometimes love looks like saying, I can't do this today. Sometimes love sounds like, I'm here for you, but I can't carry you. And sometimes love means not answering the door at all. Not because you don't care, but because you've decided to care in a way that doesn't sacrifice your sanity. Let me tell you, your emotional bandwidth is not unlimited, and your home is not a therapy office unless you are called and trained for that. Even then, those in the healing profession know they must protect their own space. So why should it be any different for you? Why should your living room be a stage for someone else's storm? Day after day, while you sit silently on the sidelines, losing parts of yourself. You have a right to peace. You have a right to stillness. And it is not unkind to protect it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what if they're going through something real? What if they need me? Of course, we're human. We help each other. But helping does not mean hosting someone's chaos until it becomes your own. You help people by pointing them to truth, by encouraging them to grow, by setting the kind of example that says, you don't have to live like this forever, but I won't let your mess live here. Because what you tolerate in your home, you begin to normalize. And before long, the dysfunction that once felt uncomfortable now feels familiar. That's how peace is lost. Not in a loud moment, but slowly, quietly, over time, as you let someone else's imbalance become part of your atmosphere. Some people are not coming for comfort. They're coming to be fueled. And once they've refilled themselves with your energy, they'll leave you empty and wonder why you're so sensitive when they call again next week, needing the same thing all over again. You've got to protect your space, not just from what's obvious, but from what's persistent, from the people who don't seem dangerous, but whose presence always leaves you feeling less than you were before they came. Because peace is not just something you pray for, it's something you preserve. There's a kind of danger that doesn't come with noise. It doesn't knock down your door or cause a scene. No, this kind slips in quietly, often with a smile, and it wraps itself in charm and familiarity. It looks harmless, maybe even helpful, but underneath that calm exterior is something subtle and corrosive. Manipulation. And let me tell you, manipulators have no business being in your home. Now this is where it gets tricky. Manipulators rarely come in waving a flag saying, hey, I'm here to control you. No, they work in shadows. They twist words. They make you second-guess yourself. They don't steal your peace all at once. They slowly take pieces of it, conversation by conversation, favor by favor, guilt trip by guilt trip. And the whole time, they make it feel like you're the one who's being unreasonable for noticing it. They might be a friend, a relative, someone you've known for years. They know your heart. They know how to push your buttons, how to make you feel obligated, indebted. They use what they know about you, not to build you up, but to keep you in a place where they benefit and you stay quiet. You've got to be able to recognize the signs. It's not always loud. Sometimes it shows up when they constantly remind you of what they've done for you. After everything I've done, you can't do this one thing? That's not generosity. That's leverage. Or maybe they disguise it with flattery, always saying the right things until you start to feel like you owe them something. That's not love. That's control dressed up in politeness. And if you call it out, oh, then come the tears, the offense. I was only trying to help. You're being too sensitive. Manipulators are masters at flipping the script. One moment you're explaining why something hurt you, the next you're apologizing for even bringing it up. You leave the conversation feeling confused, off balance, like maybe you're the one who messed up. That's not peace. That's spiritual disorientation. Your home should never be a place where you're constantly defending your own decisions, walking on eggshells, trying to keep someone else from turning your boundaries into a battleground. That's not hospitality. That's emotional captivity. And let me be clear, you can't make your home a safe haven for yourself and your family if you're busy making it a comfort zone for someone who refuses to honor your no. Some of you have let these kinds of people stay in your lives and your homes because you're afraid of the fallout. You don't want the drama. You don't want the confrontation. I understand that. But let me tell you what's worse than confrontation. Slow erosion. The kind that takes years off your spirit, steals your confidence, leaves you wondering why you don't feel free in your own house anymore. That's the real cost of keeping manipulators too close for too long. And here's the other side of this. They will test you. They'll test your willingness to choose peace over people-pleasing. They'll test your ability to say, I love you, but I won't let you twist me into someone I'm not just to keep you happy. They'll test how much you value your peace. And every time you give in, it gets harder to take your space back. But the moment you begin to stand firm, oh, something shifts. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people already decided not to understand you, you reclaim your clarity. The moment you stop bending just to keep the relationship intact, you remember the strength God gave you to walk in truth. And the moment you say, this is my house, and I will not be manipulated in it, you begin to breathe again. And let me tell you something important. Boundaries are not just for strangers. Sometimes the deepest boundaries have to be set with the people closest to us. Because manipulation doesn't always come from far away. It comes from familiarity. It comes from shared history. And that's why it's so effective. Because it doesn't look like a threat, but it is. It's a threat to your peace, to your confidence, to your calling. You're not responsible for managing someone else's insecurity just because they're uncomfortable with your growth. You're not obligated to tolerate manipulation just because it's wrapped in family ties or old friendship. And you are not required to keep someone in your space just because they expect access they haven't earned. Your home is a reflection of what you value. And if peace, honor, truth, and safety are what you cherish, then anyone who operates in manipulation doesn't belong in that environment, no matter who they are. Because peace doesn't just happen, it's protected. There's a quiet kind of danger that creeps into a home, not through chaos, not through loud drama, not through obvious conflict, but through apathy, through people who carry with them a spirit of unbelief. I'm not just talking about someone who has questions or someone who's struggling with their faith. No, I'm talking about those who consistently operate in doubt, who carry a heaviness of spiritual resistance, people who, with every word, every look, every comment, subtly press against your faith, your vision, your calling. These are the people who can't celebrate with you when God starts moving. They can't rejoice when prayers get answered. They roll their eyes at your hope, laugh at your convictions, and scoff at your hunger for the things of God. They make your obedience feel extreme. They make your worship feel embarrassing. And little by little, they try to tame the fire inside you until it's nothing more than a flicker. You've got to be careful with people like that, because they don't just sit in your living room, they sit in your spirit. Let me tell you, unbelief is contagious. It sounds harmless. Just a word here, a comment there, but before you know it, you're not praying with the same power. You're second-guessing what God told you, you're shrinking your expectations because someone else couldn't see what you see. That's how doubt works. It wears you down. It doesn't confront your faith with a full attack, it just keeps chipping away until you no longer trust the God you once believed with everything. Sometimes they come dressed in concern. Are you sure God really told you that? Don't get your hopes up too high. You've got to be realistic. And because it sounds like care, you don't notice that it's actually fear. It's not wisdom speaking. It's weariness. They've been disappointed, so now they're uncomfortable with your confidence. They've stopped believing, so now they try to water down your fire so they can feel better about their own lack of expectation. And listen to me, when someone's spirit is saturated in unbelief, they don't just doubt for themselves. They doubt for you. They speak limitation over your children, over your finances, over your future. They don't speak life. They speak logic. And logic has its place. But don't you ever let logic cancel out your faith. God didn't call you to build a life that makes sense to man. He called you to build a life that reflects His power. You need people in your home who stir your faith, not starve it. People who hear you say something crazy, something only God could do, and say, let's pray on it. Let's believe together. He's done it before, He'll do it again. But if every time you open your mouth about what you believe God is doing, someone shuts it down with doubt, you're not in agreement. You're in a silent battle. And battles don't belong in your living room. See, the atmosphere of your home matters. Some of you are trying to host the presence of God while also hosting people who resist Him. And then you wonder why your peace is off, why your joy is low, why your prayers feel heavy. It's not just about who's visiting your house, it's about what spirit they're bringing with them. You can't let everyone sit in your atmosphere and still expect clarity and power and breakthrough to flow the way it should. You've got to protect the presence of God in your home like it's treasure, because it is. And if someone consistently brings in unbelief, if every conversation becomes a question mark over your promise, then you need to make a decision, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of obedience. Because you can't walk on water while entertaining people who are still trying to pull you back to the boat. And I know, it's not easy. Sometimes it's someone you love, someone who's always been around, and you think, well, I don't want to push them away. But hear me, protecting your faith doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you stop giving their doubt the loudest voice in the room. You stop letting their limitations have authority in the space where God is trying to build something supernatural. Faith needs space to breathe, space to grow, space to declare things that don't make sense yet. And you can't do that in a house full of skeptics. You can't do that when you're constantly having to defend your belief. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can say is simply, not in this house. Because what you allow in your home doesn't just shape your environment. It shapes your expectation. And if you're going to walk in the fullness of what God has promised, you need an atmosphere that says, I believe, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it seems impossible. Because this house is not a place for doubt. This house is a place for miracles.